Hey, folks, thanks for joining us today. So often in our lives, we find ourselves doing things that we really don't enjoy, whether it's the job that we have or whatever that happens to be. And yet, ultimately, there are so many things that we can do to be happy, to experience joy. I'm really pleased today. I've got a good friend that I've known for years that has gone through some really fascinating experiences near death. And here he is now writing children's books and trying the best that he can to give back and help children to understand the values that are so important for a life of success and happiness and joy. So I hope you'll join us today. And I think you're going to just find the whole discussion very fascinating.
At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Craig, how you doing?
Good. I'm doing good, Doug. It's great to see you again.
Well, it is. And I don't think the folks realize, but we've known each other for years.
Years, yeah. And I should have said aloha because I'm officially in Hawaii. So I should have said aloha. Notice the attire. Yeah, it's been, the last time you and I talked was in, I think, when you were living in Highland or Alpine, somewhere in that area.
I think so. Yeah, I was up in Draper, but it was Alpine
Draper.
area.
That's right. Draper. You're right. Draper. Sorry. See, I've already forgotten. This is what happens with old age.
Well, but you know what? You have quite a fascinating story. And when we knew each other, what were you doing when we knew each other?
I was the CEO of a financial planning firm. And we had clients all over the country. And I was massively immersed in on the national scale with a board for that industry, and was just flying back and forth across the country and spending time in DC and New York and I kind of got burned out. I burnt out is the wrong word. I realized that I had achieved what I needed to achieve there, and my partner said, "What if we buy you out?" And I thought, I kind of like that idea, so I took him up on it, and now I'm officially, officially retired.
Well, and you know what's interesting? I talk a lot about how adventure is such an important part of people's lives, and you did what you did, you accomplished it, you felt like you didn't really need anything else as far as purpose goes for what you were doing, right. And so tell the audience, what did you do? Because this is fascinating.
Well, it's one of those stories. I had a good friend here visiting not long ago. You might know him. I won't mention his name just because I didn't say I would. But he lives there in the not too far from where you used to live. And he said, "Craig, you're actually one of the few people I've ever known that said you were going to do something, and then you went and did it." And what he's referring to is when I sold my share in the company, I basically just said, you know what, I've got to do something completely different. I had been diagnosed with a pretty rough illness, and they didn't give me long to live. And when I survived that through every miracle you could possibly imagine, I said, that's it. This is, God is telling me that I need to be moving forward. And so I sold my interest in the business. I sold my home there in Utah, got rid of my cars, sold my furniture, and packed up and bought a little place, a little farm here in Hawaii on the Big Island. And now I'm growing my own food, and I've got solar power, and I'm writing children's books.
And what got you writing children's books? I've only interviewed one other person, a lady that has written some amazing children's books. And when you contacted me, and it's like, okay, I'm going to send you these children's books, and I'm going, what on earth, from the guy that I knew that managed financial stuff to writing children's books? What was the motivation? What was the inspiration?
Well, from the time I was a little kid, I was given what my grandmother said and my parents said, the gift of gab. I guess you could say the ability to spin a good yarn. And I just love telling stories. And as I got into my profession, as I got older, I realized that I would tell stories all the time to help my clients understand the concepts of finance, which sometimes can be quite complicated. So I started using stories, and the stories would catch on and they would resonate. And later, as the years went on, my clients would share those same stories with their kids. And I ended up with like 2 and 3 generations of clients that would come back to me and repeat or regurgitate. Now, mom and dad or grandma, grandpa told me the story about how we don't want to kill our soldiers. I would refer to their dollar bills as being soldiers, and you don't want to kill your soldiers off. You want them to work for you.
Right.
And began to realize that anecdotes stuck with people. And the simpler I made the story, the more it would resonate. And I thought, we need to start teaching kids at a younger age. And all the stories that I remember growing up stuck with me. And so it just it doesn't make sense, but yet it kind of does. That jump to children's stories, because I thought, gee, I want to share stories that resonate with children and stick with them, that have a good purpose, that have a good ending, or a good storyline. And so that was kind of my impetus to jump to writing children's books, which is such a far cry from what I was doing.
And you've won some awards, right, with your books?
Shockingly enough, yeah. I didn't set out to win awards, but I ran across an author and he said, you really ought to submit your books to these different book fairs and contests and conferences and things. And I thought, well, that's okay. I'll give that a shot. And so I submitted to a few and got a couple like honorable mentions. In other words, we got your book. It was better than a lot that we had. So here's an honorable mention. I thought, well, that's kind of interesting. And so I submitted it to a few more, and lo and behold, I ended up winning a couple, and it was a finalist in a couple. And now I can actually say that I'm an international multi-award winning children's author, which is
that's great.
just amazing. I mean, yeah, just amazing journey.
We're going to talk about that. But before we started the show, you and I were talking a little bit, and you were sharing how you overcame that life-threatening disease that you had. And we don't have to go into it too much, but I find it fascinating. And I see this a lot. As you know, I have a background in medicine and dentistry and so forth. But what you were sharing with me, and I'd like you to go into it a little bit more if you don't mind. If you don't want to, that's fine. But
I'm happy to share.
The question is, in fact, I've experienced this too. You get on certain medicines for whatever as you're getting a little bit older, and all of a sudden they're working against each other, and all of a sudden you're having symptomology that is really not what you want to have, and yet here you are completely doing well from that life-threatening disease. What went on, and how did it ultimately get better?
It was just. I'll explain it this way. So, I started realizing that I wasn't feeling very good, and one day just about passed out. My heart rate had dropped to almost 40 beats a minute, and I was starting to lose consciousness. And my wife, I don't know how she did this, because she's only 5'3", pounds, and I'm 6'1", and 200 plus pounds. And she got me to the car and drove me to the hospital, and they said, his body's shutting down. He's shutting down. And so anyway, fast forward, they were putting me on a regimen of things that were treatments that were gonna hopefully quote unquote hopefully help me. And got a diagnosis from the doctor after about a month and a half of tests that I had anywhere from 6 to 9 months to live. And that was, boy, that's a gesundheit. That's a sobering topic. That's a sobering.
Oh yeah.
And I went, well, okay, there it is. So they got more aggressive with their treatments, and And all of a sudden I wasn't getting better. I was actually getting worse progressively faster. And I think I dropped down to about 178 pounds, and wasn't able to eat hardly anything, had lost my appetite, writing on the wall kind of a thing. And my cute wife, she was a medical assistant background, and she was looking up all the prescriptions and everything they were giving me, and went back to the doctors, and she said, I've done this research on these. I hope you don't mind, but it seems like some of the medication you're giving him is actually fighting other medication that you're giving him. So, and that seems to be the case. And the doctors kind of looked at everything, because I had like 3 different doctors at that point in time. I had my general practitioner, and then I had 2 specialists that I was seeing, and they were all prescribing, right, based upon how they were looking at my illness. And sure enough, they said, you know what, that makes a lot of sense. We've seen that happen in the past with these kinds of cases. So they changed my regimen of prescriptions, and literally within 6 months, I had a complete recession of the illness. I take that back, not a complete recession, but I was getting better. And changed my lifestyle, changed my eating habits, changed kind of everything really. And which ultimately led to me moving to Hawaii, and got me kind of out of death's doorstep. And now here we are 4 years later, and I'm as healthy as I've ever been. I'm in better shape than I've ever been, given my age. But it's shocking. It's truly shocking, and somewhat of a miracle. I had a lot of prayers. I had a lot of people praying for me, people I didn't even know, and that to me was also somewhat overwhelming. I come from a small community in Kentucky, and by the time things had culminated, every church, every denomination had offered, prayers. And I was like, I don't even know these people. I didn't even know these people. So, I would have to say there was a lot of positive influence coming my way. And for that, I will be eternally grateful. So, yeah.
Well, yeah. And isn't it interesting how, whether you want to call it prayers or, the meditation, healing, all of that type of thing, when people gather together and their energy is tapping into whatever to heal someone or to help someone to do better, it's amazing. We call them miracles. And yet here you are. But what fascinates me is that you moved from something you were doing into a whole ideal type of place to live with your property and your house and so forth. And has it changed your perspective on life to make those changes?
Oh, absolutely. Things that I used to get so worked up about and so uptight about, all of a sudden kind of melted away. And I almost think that was part of the healing process as well. When I became less concerned with what was going on in the world and the microcosms that people get caught up in, and the headbutting that goes on in our social media life now. And I kind of removed myself from a lot of that. The stress and the anxiety, and at times the just sheer frustration of life in general kind of melted away. I began to realize that frenetic pace that I was living is just as much detrimental to my life as the illness that I was fighting. And now to say that I'm truly at peace is an understatement. I am truly at peace. I love being out here working in my garden. I'm growing limes and Valencia oranges and tangerines. I got pineapples.
Wow.
I got a little banana grow. And I'm just loving it. I just have thoroughly enjoyed it, and I'm more relaxed now than I've ever been. I go to sleep about that quick when I go to bed at night, and I wake up in the morning and I'm ready to go. And it's been a true miracle. It's been a true inspiration to myself.
So And you mentioned, and it's so true. I mean, there's been a lot of studies now done medically that shows that stress, anxiety, all of those things are absolutely detrimental to an individual's health, to the point that they experience all sorts of different things. And I think we've all gone through that to a point. So you're not a coach. You're not, you're not a psychologist.
No.
But if you were going to talk to people who are feeling stress and are feeling anxiety and are just really not experiencing the joy of life, what would you say to them?
This is going to sound so trite, but you've almost got to find a happy place, a place of refuge. And whether that's a city park, whether that's a room in your home, whether that's reading a good book, whether that's, driving down the road. I find solace. I have a Harley Davidson, so I would jump on my motorcycle and just get out on a lone byway somewhere where there were just not a lot. Now it's my property here, but you've got to find some place that you can find true respite, true relaxation, someplace where you can just go, okay, I'm taking this moment for myself. And then you've got to start removing the obstacles in your life that are in the way of that peace. There are toxic people all around us in this world, and they've become more toxic. And that could be a close friend, that could be coworkers, that could be family members even can also add to toxicity in your life. And I would say you've got to start saying, all right, I love you, but, I can only take this much, and then I have to be done for today. And
you know what? That is so tough to do, but it is so true. I remember in my own personal life, I had to separate from a family member for a while, just because they were impinging on some important things in my life. And, it's fascinating how people, the fear of doing that can be so great that they continue to experience the negativity in their life and the stress and all of those types of things. And all they have to do is, number one, be aware that that's what's going on.
That's the first thing.
Yeah. But number two, being courageous enough to really delve into it and make tough decisions. And you know what? That is not easy. So here you are, you're living the life in Hawaii. And all of a sudden you're starting to write these children's books. Okay. So that's fun. It's fun. You're writing the books and so forth. But overall, what is the purpose? What do you find is within that heart of yours is the purpose of why you decided to actually write the books and the children's books rather than just telling stories the way you used to?
I think something that could be passed on, something that's a bit more permanent than word of mouth gets lost over time, as you and I both know. And so I decided, I think I've got some good stories from my years of experience in travel, from my personal experiences. And that's what these first two books are. They're from my travels and from my personal experiences as a youth. That I felt would stick with people, that had a viable meaning, that would encourage. And I think that's what I really wanted to do with my writing, as I wanted to be very encouraging and very positive, have some good values that need to be conveyed, which I think we're losing at a rapid pace in our current world. And just kind of reminders, really, written word reminders that something that a small child can pick up, because small children are so coachable, and their minds are so much like a sponge. They just absorb everything around them. So for me as a child, my dad left when I was fairly young and wasn't really in my life, and my grandparents raised me. And they were always very encouraging, and they stepped in and provided me some guidance that I may have not normally gotten in a single family home. And so I wanted to convey that and push that forward. I turned to books at a young age. I turned to stories at a young age. I read the Robin Hoods, and I read the Edgar Rice Burroughs, the Tarzans, and the John Carter of Mars. And, I read all of those books and just got completely Pearl S. Buck, A Good Earth. And just my reading as it was a way for me to escape the struggles of my reality. And I've turned, here I am, through a professional career, and I'm going, that's what got me to that point where I became successful, is that I found solace in reading, and I found direction in reading, and I found people that had to overcome tremendous obstacles to pursue their dreams and to pursue what they envisioned for themselves. And so I just want to perpetuate that, and I want to continue that, and I want to be the next generation of authors that provide that value and that story and that encouragement to readers, just like I was when I was young.
And it's really interesting, as you mentioned, I think the kids now, in many cases, are really struggling, the young people. And a lot of it has to do with, well, we won't go into that, but they really are struggling. What's interesting to me, and I've been doing some very interesting studies. One of the things that has come up that I think is so true is that what we experience in our life is really based on all of our experiences in childhood. It's all those subconscious beliefs that we've developed and so forth. It creates a perception, and therefore, you and I could be standing in front of one person, and they could say something to you, and they could say something to me. And if you are that happy-go-lucky, smiling kind of person, and I'm one that's kind of frustrated and so forth, we're going to take that same comment, and you're going to go, "Oh, wasn't that lovely?" And I'm going to go, "They're just criticizing." And it's perspective and perception. And it's so true with our children now that, they're seeing so much on, as you mentioned, social media, they're being told so many things. And guess what? They're developing a perception based on what they're hearing. So I love the fact that your goal is to try to teach these kids, that they would just read, try to teach them some of these little subtleties of goodness and kindness and love and all of that perhaps will affect them in a very positive way, so that when they grow up and start to experience life in general, their perception will be such that they're really experiencing a life of joy and happiness.
Right. And realizing and recognizing that if you base your success or what you think is success on what social media or what the current world portrays, you're going to be chasing. It's like a dog chasing his tail. You'll never catch it, because what is being projected as success and happiness and stability and all these things that is being projected in the world of social media and our mainstream media, it's impossible to keep up with. You can't ever catch that. So if you can find some core values for yourself when those difficult times and trying times in your life and those challenges come, and they will come, you'll have a better basis of a way to overcome them. And that's what reading at a young age did for me, is that it allowed me to go back and say, well, I remember when King Arthur was struggling really bad and things were falling apart. Now, granted, at the end of that story, it didn't work out too well for him. He didn't win. He actually ended up losing basically everything. But that story continued to resonate through the centuries to a point where me as a young child said, but he still dreamed. He still dreamed of something better than what was available at the time. And I think we've got to teach kids to dream again. We've got to teach them to stay focused on their expectations and not what the world expects, because that's a non-attainable goal.
Well, and what would you talk about values based on what you have experienced and what you observed, what would you say are some of those important values that our children need to learn, and hopefully our parents are able to teach them in a positive way?
Failure is okay. Number one, it is okay to fall flat on your face. And in fact, I used to tell my kids all the time, it doesn't matter how many times you fail. That's okay. As long as you learn something from every single failure, then the next time you'll know what to overcome.
Well, and that's interesting because so many children are brought up thinking that they're failures, they're no good,
right.
And that belief has affected so many people in their lives. And yet, as you say, to understand that failure isn't a failure, it's an experience that helps us to grow.
Right. I mean, I still get invited to lecture at universities, and I still lecture at UVU every quarter or every semester still. And I tell the kids, best thing you can do is go out and fail. That's the best advice I can give you is go out and fall flat on your face, because you will learn more in that failure than every success you'll ever have. It really doesn't matter. And it's okay to stumble, and it's okay. Pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and say, okay, what did I learn just now? I learned that. Okay.
Yeah. And a lot of times it's totally out of your hands that failure occurs.
Yeah.
But many times it's just subtle things about us that if we realize, wow, I've got to change this because what I did there is probably contributing to the failure. So if I can change that approach and, having the ability to do that. And as you say, we're so brought up in a community and a concept of failure and sin and all of that and guilt and shame.
Right.
When, as you're talking about it, if we look at it from a different perspective and perception of, what, I am so grateful for this experience because look what I've learned. And so the next time I'm going to do this, I'm going to do better. Yeah,
exactly. I can't speak enough about that. I really can't. I mean, I think if I were to do any coaching at all, it would be, oh, you failed today. Great. What did you learn? It's like, that's awesome. What did you learn? And if we start changing the perception of failure being this end all be all, and it's going to be what breaks people, to that just didn't work this time. Okay. And be willing, like you said, be willing to look at yourself and say, all right, how can I improve me? How can I improve me? So that the next time I recognize one of the things I was really bad at as younger was asking for help. I was really, really bad. I felt like I had to do everything myself, that all great ideas originated in me. And therefore, it was all on me for everything. And once I realized through failure that it's good to ask people for help, it's okay to ask questions, I became a nuisance because I started asking a lot of questions. I would find the most successful people I could find in whatever it was I was trying to accomplish and say, I did this in high school, and I highly recommend this. I would find someone that I really thought was truly successful, and I would call them up. I'd call their office and talk to the secretary. I'm a high school student. This is what I'm doing. I would really love to take so-and-so to lunch. If he'd be willing, on me, I'll pay for the lunch because I know his time is valuable. And I would go take these people to lunch and sit down with them. And I'll tell you what, I think I rarely paid for lunch. I really believe, I can't remember how many times I actually paid for lunch. And I would ask questions. And invariably what I learned through asking these successful people questions was they all failed, and they all felt like they had made massive mistakes, and they all felt like they weren't good enough. And that commonality just helped me along. And they would always offer, say, have you read this? Or have you read this? Or, have you researched this? And they turned me into a knowledge hound, for lack of a better explanation, to where I was seeking out and wanting to find, what were they reading? What were they doing? What time did they get up in the morning? What time did they go to bed at night? Where were they focusing their time and attention? How did they take time off? And invariably, a lot of that sculpted who I eventually ended up becoming. And it was okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So failure, one important thing. What are some of the other values that you find we really need our children to understand for their health?
Determination. perseverance, and determination. When things get difficult, if things aren't going the way you want them to go, I find that people quit too quickly. They quit too quickly. And sometimes I'm finding that they quit because they are afraid of failing. So they quit. It's easier to quit and walk away. And there are times when that may be the case, that's necessary, but exhaust every opportunity. A good example of this is my friends hated playing board games with me when I was younger. Hated it, especially Monopoly. I would seriously, I was worse when I was losing than when I was winning. When I was winning, it was fine. But when I was losing, I would literally go through and mortgage every single property I had to roll the dice, see if I could get past go and get $200 and pull Baltic Avenue out of mortgage again. I would do that, just whatever it took to get around the board one more time. I mean, ultimately, I lost a lot of games. But I would literally exhaust myself in the game to find out, okay, what move do I have left? What do I have left? And so I think too many people quit too quick. And I think you need to have some determination on your goals. You need to have very defined goals. Those goals need to be movable. And that's the other thing. Perseverance, determination, and your goals need to be flexible. Sometimes we get in these rooms and people say, where do you see yourself in 5 years? Where do you see yourself in 10 years? Paint the biggest picture you possibly can. That's great. But they fail to say, all right, now back all those goals down. What can you start doing today to meet that goal 10 years from now? And they don't take the big monstrous goal down to something that's bite-sized. And that's where most people fail, is they set these exorbitant goals for themselves. And when they don't meet these exorbitant goals, they quit. So their lack of determination is hampered in the fact that they've created too big of a goal. Well, let's start with a simple goal. All right, you have a hard time getting up in the morning? Great. What time should you be getting up in the morning? Well, 8 o'clock. Okay, great. You sleep until 9:30, 10 o'clock. Well, all right. Start setting the clock 15 minutes earlier, into the fact that you hit that goal of 8 o'clock, or, I get up a heck of a lot earlier than that, but
so do I.
yeah. I mean, if 6 o'clock comes around and I'm not out of bed already, I feel like I've slept in. But I mean, it's incremental. That didn't happen overnight. It's incremental. Incremental victories, small victories lead to big success.
Well, and there's a saying that comes to my mind, and I smile with it. It's, be a little bit afraid of what you ask for, because you might get it.
You might get it.
And it's interesting. Here you were extremely successful in your business and so forth. You found a whole new adventure and a different life, which obviously you're experiencing and loving it and so forth.
Yeah.
I think one thing I remember from years ago when I was going to business school was this concept of, once you've played a game and won,
right,
it's time to find a new game.
Time to get a new game.
Yeah, it's time to get a new game. And you know what? In our lives, we may have multiple games that we're playing. But the point is if those games give us a sense of success and give us, more importantly, a success of joy and happiness and service, it makes such a difference. When I was younger, I was the American dream. I was chasing the brass key. I really was. I was, whatever it took, whatever hours it took, and I paid a price for that. And you pay a price for success. Don't kid yourself. And for me, it was unfortunately time away from my kids. And I would tell people, hey, you only have to work half days if you want to be successful. The first 12 hours or the second 12 hours. Now, I stole that from somebody. I can't remember exactly who it was, but it may have been Warren Buffett, actually, I think, come to mind. But my kids said, Dad, it was more like 16 hours. Yeah.
Yeah, they're probably right. They're probably right. But you will pay a price. So you have to decide, I'm not that person anymore. Now I love having my kids around. They love coming over and visit. When they come over and visit, everything gets set aside, and all I do is focus on them the whole trip. And it's wonderful and it's great. But you have to be careful what you wish for. You just might get it.
Well, that's true.
That may not be a bad thing. That may not be a bad thing.
No. And you know what? You sent me a couple books. I've read both of them. When
Oh,
I first got them, the other day, I'm going, holy cow, how am I going to read these? And then I realized these are kids' books.
these are kids.
And so Pablo and his painting, and
Yeah,
and this story about you, apparently about how you
yeah,
almost scared Santa away. You've got a
yeah.
new book. You've written a new book, right?
No, the Santa is the new book. That's the
Oh,
one
it
that
is.
came out.
Okay.
That's the one that just barely came out. In fact, it's ironic because here it is, July 25th. We're talking, and Christmas in July, and our book just released this month. And I keep joking, well, let's get this thing out there for Christmas in July. But yeah, Pablo. Do you mind if let's talk about Pablo for a second?
No, because I find that, one of the questions I was going to ask is, as you've written these books,
Right.
what is really the main meaning that you're trying to portray to the children that are going to be reading these, or even to the adults that may be reading it to their children?
Honestly, yeah, I think adults could probably learn from it as well, probably more. Well, so I went on a trip many, many years ago, almost 40 years ago now, not quite 35. And I was in Mazatlan, Mexico, and typical tourist out there doing the typical tourist thing. And we walked by this section that had paints and souvenirs and all that stuff you can buy in Mexico. And there was an older gentleman out in front of one of these places, and he was painting plates. And I was watching him, and they were just these. Do I have one here? Yeah, I've got one here. This is actually one of those.
Okay, for those that are not listening and watching, you can see that.
For those watching can see this. But I was like stunned because he would whip out this painting in like minutes, in just minutes. And then as people, throughout our trip there, I would stop by every day and I would watch him for a few minutes. And I started kind of asking him questions when he wasn't busy. And the story of Pablo was born from that. And I asked him, I said, well, when did you start painting? Oh, I loved as a child. I loved to draw as a child. And my mother saw that I really enjoyed drawing, and she facilitated me meeting a local artist in our community, and he took me under his wing, and I had to earn my keep to learn painting from him. And over time, he became this painter, and he could paint almost anything imaginable. People would come by and say, paint me on the beach and dolphins in the water, and just create, and he would whip it out in just minutes. I think I bought 9 plates from the guy while I was there, just because I was so enthralled by it. And his story of education and respect and determination to follow his dreams till the point that he became successful. And is now apprenticing, a child under him to learn how to do this. And just the story captivated me. And I told the story in lectures for years and would share that with people and say, here's an individual in Mexico that was making a very good living for himself and doing something he truly loved. And how can you not be enthralled with that story, with that success? But he said hours and hours and hours over years and years and years to perfect his skill. So Pablo, the plate painter of Mazatlan, is basically that story, based on that story, and how any child with a dream to achieve something, if they follow the blueprint of that story in that book, could also achieve the success they're looking for.
Well, and I think you've hit on a really key aspect. Doing something that you love, if you can do it the right way, right, you're going to be able to support yourself financially, and yet at the same time, it's no longer work.
Exactly. I loved what I did in finance. I really did. I devoured books on it. I went to lectures. I researched, I studied, I got copious numbers of licenses and took copious numbers of tests.
Oh, yeah.
I really enjoyed the process. I really enjoyed the whole process. And I love being able to do what I did for our clients. Writing, I've always loved writing. I've always loved telling stories. So really, my career allowed me that expression. And when that career was no longer available to me, I thought, well, what am I going to do now? Right. And that's when I started.
And it came.
Down.
And one of the messages is, as you were just sharing this with Pablo, about Pablo, is this concept of paying it forward. Here he received a mentorship from someone. Now that he's older, being successful, he's turning around and seeking to mentor someone else. And I think that's so important.
Right. And it was instigated by his family, seeing that he had a love for something and helping, giving him that little push, getting him that introduction. And I think that's where family becomes so important in a young person's life. If they've got, I don't care if it's an uncle, an aunt, a grandparent, a cousin, a brother, sister, mother, it doesn't matter who it is. If there is someone that can help guide that young energy into the thing they love doing, it just makes all the world of difference to that.
Well, and it's such a challenge, because I grew up in a family, 5 boys, 1 girl, right? And my dad basically said to us, "You will all be professionals." Now he was a classical voice teacher, and nationally known. Okay, and yet what he said to us is, "You will all be professionals." So business school, dentistry, MBAs, whatever that happens to be, right. Except for one brother who really took it hard from my dad, because he would keep criticizing him. He didn't go to college and so forth. But guess who's the wealthiest one in the family?
See, there you go.
There you go.
Yeah,
so,
there you go.
It's interesting how, as parents, what a challenge and what a blessing it would be to identify what our children really love, what are their values, what is it that they want to do. And instead of saying, no, you need to be this or you need to do that, encouraging them and helping them to discover a way that they can make a good living doing the thing that they love.
Right. And it's okay if, and here's the other side of that. It's the fact that, maybe you can't make a living doing what you really love to do. So in the meantime, earn a living, but don't put your passion away. And that happens so often. So you hear people all the time, I got a degree in this, or I started in the family business, or I had to get a job and started this. But gosh, I really always wanted to be a photographer, a chef, whatever it is. Don't hide that, an artist, don't hide that passion. Continue to pursue that passion until your livelihood allows you to pursue the passion. Maybe it doesn't happen right away. Colonel Sanders didn't become the founder of KFC until he was 65. And being a Kentucky boy, that's a story I grew up with. And selling chicken on the side of a road.
And and it's so challenging. I remember as I was working with clients, doing some business consulting, it was fascinating because so many people would say, "Oh, I hate my job. I hate my job." And I'm going, "All right, what is it that you love?" And they go, "Well, I'd like to do this." I said, wait a minute. How about looking at your job not as your life, but as a means of allowing you to do these other things? And again, we get into perception, but the minute they change their perception, realize that job is giving them a livelihood, that if they will just quit complaining about it and focus on the fact that it's giving them the ability to do something that they really love, what a difference it makes in their lives.
Yeah, sometimes you have to find an unpleasant conduit to get you through the trouble to the thing you enjoy doing. And it's, my grandmother used to say, and I'm gonna tone this down a bit, but she would say, never let shoveling manure be beneath you.
And I can understand how you tone that down.
Yeah. So I always took that to heart. It's like, I had jobs that I absolutely hated. I hated it, but I was like, okay, this is just a means to an end. I got to do my job. I'm going to do it the best I can because I've committed to this job. So I'm going to shovel some manure for a while because I know at the end of the day, I'm going to get to go do the thing I really enjoy doing. And so, and you have to recognize that that's okay. And to me, that's not failing. That's succeeding. If you're
exactly.
if you're able to do the thing you don't enjoy so that you can have time or the money or the resources to do the things you really do love to do, to me, that's success.
All right. So as we're coming to a close here, Craig.
Yeah. We haven't even talked about the Christmas story. Darn, missed out on
Yeah. Real quick, if you could share, and you can include the Christmas story in this, if you could take 1 minute and share a message that you would like to share to the audience, what would that be?
I am going to use a Christmas story because I think it's germane. When I was little, and this is where the Christmas story came from, I was extremely impatient for the rewards of Christmas, extremely impatient. And in fact, got to the point that my family would become exhausted with my attempts to catch Santa Claus. I would be up all night long. I would sneak out of my room. I would do all the things that a child that is anxious for Santa Claus to come would do. I became so impatient that I jeopardized what should have been a miraculous morning. And life is much like that. We become so impatient for the culmination of the thing that we want, for that to happen, that sometimes we get in our way and create potential for the thing that we truly want to not take place.
Amen to that. Craig,
get in our own way.
Yeah, it's been so wonderful to reconnect. I mean,
yeah,
how many years has it been? 10?
Oh gosh, Doug, I don't know, but I wouldn't be surprised if that's not the case.
Yeah, that's amazing.
Maybe.
But this is wonderful. And so what's your next book going to be?
I'm actually working on a series that has been, I've got a couple of series that I'm working on right now. And the one that I'm having the most fun with is I've got a dog named Moku. And he is a healer. So a lot of energy. And we've been showing him around the island. We got him as a puppy. And so it's going to, the working title right now is Moku, The Adventures of a Big Island Dog.
Oh,
Adventures that we had on Hawaiian Islands with all the animals and the volcanoes and the lava tubes and the ocean and everything.
That's wonderful. So real quick, how could people find your books?
We actually, and we did this just for the show, we actually have on our webpage, craigtheauthor.com/Dr. Doug, Dr. Doug. And we've got a special offer that if they go into that site, they can get both of these books, Pablo the Plate Painter of Mazatlan and The Christmas I Almost Scared Santa Away. There's the title.
Yeah, there you go.
You get both books together, and that covers shipping and everything, and it's cheaper than you can get it on Amazon.
Oh, fantastic. Well, and thank you. And folks, thanks for listening. I hope you really enjoyed this. And, it's such an important message. So have a joyous life, find joy in what you're doing, get rid of that stress, and quite frankly, eliminate the people in your lives that are causing that stress. So thanks for listening, and we look forward to having you join us again.